Are the Democrats a racist? That's the juicy question stemming from the Snow White box office disaster this weekend because, as a proportion of the population, a majority of movie theatres and moviegoers are Democrats in big cities. Which means that if the failure of Snow White at the box office is because racism, then that must be Democrat racism, right? Well, that's awkward. But in truth, these box office numbers don't say that Democrats are racist. They actually say something much deeper and more profound. They say that the age of virtue signaling might finally have come to an end. My name's Topher Field. This is the Topher Project, and I help people like you to understand the world as it changes around you. Something that hasn't changed is the run of box office failures that the Disney Corporation are currently on. The remake of Dumbo was the movie absolutely no one asked for and few people went to see, costing them about 80 million in losses. Likewise, Pinocchio sank faster than the Titanic because, well, according to reviewers, it was soulless. Ouch. And clearly, the problem is it wasn't woke enough. You see, if they'd made Pinocchio non binary instead of reinforcing the patriarchy and making him a little boy, well, then people would, of course, signed up to Disney Plus in their millions and they would have made a fortune. Back to reality. Disney's string of outs also includes Mufasa, The Lion King, which is an attempted remake of perhaps one of the most beloved movies of my childhood, which only cost Disney about 50 million in losses. So, what do you do when the public are tired of your woke reimagining of fairy tales from a bygone era? Back when the name Disney used to mean good. What do? Well, you ruin another classic, this time Snow White. Now, there's a funny thing about literature. The fans usually get pretty attached to their literature, and when a lead character is described in a very specific way, like, I don't know, her skin was white as snow, the fans get pretty grumpy with you when you don't obey that description. Just ask Amazon how they went with their mixed race elves in the Rings of Power. But let's clear something up here. Audiences do not object to a brown Disney princess. Not only was the original animated Aladdin movie one of Disney's most successful movies at the time, their 2019 live action remake pulled over $1 billion in the box office worldwide, and that has a Middle Eastern princess. And need I mention the spectacular success of Mulan, Pocahontas, with Asian and American Indian lead roles respectively? These aren't just lead roles, in fact, they are title roles. These films are literally about women of color, and people all over the world, including white Americans, flocked to see them. People never objected to Rachel Zegler as a Disney princess because she's brown. They object to her as Snow White because she looks nothing like the way her character is described in the original work. And for fans of the work, that matters, especially when that description is the name of the character. But Disney's gonna Disney, and these days that means that they're gonna say, screw the fans, we know best. So they stuck with Zegler in the lead role even after she insisted on politicizing the movie with woke comments to the media, which further alienated their fans. The result? Well, the remake of Snow White opened in the box office this weekend, and it's not pretty. They took a gross of $43 million, which is a lot of money, until you realize they spent $470 million making the movie. And by the way, the production company only gets a portion of the box office gross. The cinemas, of course, take a chunk, and then the distributors and marketers take a chunk, and then the production company, Disney in this case, only gets whatever's left. So, given that we can expect the opening weekend to be their best weekend, and it's all downhill from here, yeah, this is looking like a $400 million loss to Disney, which is bad even by their appalling standards. But here's where it gets interesting for me. In an article published on Deadline, Anthony D'Alessandro breaks down the revenue by political leanings, and it is not a good look for the Democrats. First, some context. Film ticket sales are one of the most carefully tracked metrics in the entertainment industry, so we have accurate data to draw from. And it is a fact that a majority of theatres and a majority of theatre goers are Democrats in Democrat held areas, unsurprisingly, mostly the big Democrat cities. Now, according to Anthony, Democrat areas generate 63% of cinema attendance on average, and this matches exactly with the expected ratio for specifically family friendly movies of 63% from Democrat areas. That's what would be considered normal. But this Disney remake of Snow White is anything but normal. It's had a lot of press, and not all of it good. And it has, according to some, been subject to racist attacks because the lead actress isn't white enough. So, in this racially charged atmosphere, you would expect Snow White to do poorly in the racist Republican areas, but to do well, and better than usual, surely, in the anti racist Kamala Harris supporting Democrat cities. Trouble is, that's not what happened. What happened was that Republican areas made up 43.5% of admissions, compared to 37.5%, which is what was expected for a family friendly movie, meaning that Republicans showed up nearly 20% above expectations and Democrats underperformed. 75 million people apparently voted for Kamala Harris, and I'm at least 96% sure that not all of them are dead. And if they voted for a woman of color to be the president of the United States, then surely they wouldn't object to a woman of color playing the lead role in Snow White. So the question is, where did they go? If just 10% of them, 7.5 million, had turned up for the opening weekend, then we would not be talking about a flop. We'd be talking about a solid opening weekend with good profits in sight. And the Republican areas, well, they did their part. They overperformed. But where were the Democrats? What's revealed here is two key things, one obvious and the other one less so. Firstly, the people we were told were racists, those evil rural Republicans, well, they're not. Like I said, audiences worldwide, including white Republicans, showed up in huge numbers for Aladdin, including the 2019 remake. So this is current, as well as for Mulan, Pocahontas, and more throughout history. The issue here isn't that the princess is brown, it's that she doesn't look anything like the character described in the beloved original work on which this is supposed to be based. Now, that is obvious, but what's less obvious, more important, is the second lesson, which is that even Democrats have tired of the woke diversity, equity, and inclusivity nonsense. And they can't even be bothered to show up to a movie theatre in solidarity for anti racism anymore. Disney Corporation itself has had to walk back their own DEI programs, as are many other major employers and corporations, perhaps most significantly BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, who previously were all about DEI. They literally required the companies they bought into to go all in on diversity instead of on merit. But as of February 28th this year, they announced a radical change of heart, which is brought on by, and I quote, significant changes to the US legal and policy environment, end quote. You think? Now, that could be written off as a bit of corporate butt saving in a post Trump election world, but I don't think that quite captures the moment of what's happening here. I think the fact that Trump got re elected for the second time is proof of a much deeper and more profound change among the wider population. And now, on the back of that, the failure of Snow White at the box office, and in particular its failure among Democrat supporters, well, you put all that together, and what this indicates to me is that this sweeping cultural sea change, this rejection of DEI and wokeness, has now reached even the Democratic strongholds. People, not even Democrats, that no one's interested in virtue signaling anymore. Even the people who have spent the last 20 years doing it are tuning out. Just 5 years ago, Democrats would have showed up to a snow brown opening weekend in their droves, cameras in hand, plastering pictures all over social media so that their friends could comment and call them stunning and brave for sticking it up to those racists who didn't show up. But now, in 2025, crickets. A perfect virtue signaling opportunity has passed them by, and crickets. That, for me, is far more significant than anything else about this Snow White remake or its box office performance. The movie became political. It became about race. For Democrats, it became a perfect opportunity to go and have fun watching a movie and show the world how virtuous we are. And yet, they stayed away in their tens of millions. We know that corporates are walking away from virtue signaling like a teenager walking away from a smelly fart. They want to get away as fast as they can, but they don't want to look like they're getting away as fast as they can because then people will know that it was them. They're trying to look innocent whilst hiding their guilt, but we knew that already. What's new, what Snow Brown has showed us, is that even among rusted on Democrats, the age of virtue signaling is finally, belatedly, coming to an end. And in my opinion, not a moment too soon. My name's Topher Field. This is the Topher Project, and I help people like you to understand the world as it changes around you. I do this full time. You can support my work by buying my books and my merch from goodpeoplebreakbadlaws.com. Of course, follow me on all the socials via @TopherField. Please subscribe, like, comment. And by the way, YouTube thinks that you would enjoy another one of my videos, so why not check it out? I'll see you in the next one.